Yep, we are
We'll just
live.
sweet. Well, welcome back everyone to a episode 7 of the Remnant. Obviously, weirdly timed this one, well outside of our normal schedule, and well outside of the schedule that I had initially planned for this episode. So I guess I should explain myself. I initially had this one down for this time yesterday, wherever you are in the world. 24 hours ago. However, had a last minute change of plans the night before from my perspective, very late the night before, like it would have been 8 or 9 hours before we were supposed to go live. I let the Zulu know, but I unfortunately overlooked letting the rest of the audience know. So I apologize to everyone for that. If you didn't get Zulu's message, then obviously you would have been unaware. And as a result, because obviously I put a space up uh, in the lead up that people were able to, register their interest for, I suppose. Obviously, that space never went live, and so I've just had to start one now. So we may get less people on the space because people aren't going to get notified, and obviously, they may not be available this time around, whereas they would have been yesterday. But anyway, nothing we can do about it now. We'll just have to crack into it. So, Zulu, I believe you wanted to get started on a couple of topics, but before that, I suppose any kind of opening remarks you wanted to make at all, or anything.
Yeah, no, just thank everybody who came along, and I hope it still will show up in people's sidebar or whatever. So hopefully, I reckon we'll still get plenty of callers.
For sure. Yeah. So obviously, the topic in the at the top of the space at the moment is Afro Man and his recent success. I should say, his success in defending himself against a defamation lawsuit that was leveled by a bunch of cops in Ohio who basically accused him of defaming them by making a set of like music videos and an album making fun of the time when I think it was 2022 when he um, he was door knocked and raided by a bunch of cops who had a warrant suggesting that he had drugs and drug paraphernalia and that there'd been like kidnapping and various other things on his property. So anyway, Zula, did you want to take us through it and kind of give your take on it?
Yeah, sure. So like, yeah, as you mentioned, there was that original raid some years ago now, um, where it was this very strange warrant um, for drugs. I mean, he says in the song, "Will you help me repair my door?" Which is kind of like where the world found out about this. He says, "Well, I understand drugs, but why kidnapping?" Because I mean, he's famous for he's the one who wrote that song, "Because I Got High," right? So that one, the drugs, okay, I can understand why they might think that, but kidnapping is very strange, and they did strange things in their search, which makes like, a little bit suspicious, I will say. Um, for instance, they were like going through taking all his cash, which I mean, that does happen for like drug raids because it's like, oh, it might be drug cash or whatever. And that's what ends up like perpetuating into a further issue down the line. Um, but then like they like turn off all his cameras and everything, and like allegedly there were some problems apparently with some of the body cam footage as well. So that's very suspicious stuff to be doing. If you're just, if you got like some tip that there's a big drug dealer in there and he's kidnapping people, like why would you be turning off and shutting off like CCTV cameras? That doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So that was like kind of where it originated, and this obviously, you know, didn't rub him necessarily the right way. He was quite pissed off about that, so he made a series of songs. He's been making songs about this incident for quite a while, and basically, it culminated in they are suing or they tried to sue him, the police officers, for defamation. But there's, as far as I'm aware, there's sort of like two aspects to their defamation case. Like one aspect is that they're alleging some sort of breach of privacy for him using footage of them raiding his house in his music videos on them, which just on its face strikes me as utterly absurd. The fact that that agents of the state would have the gall to raid your home on some bullshit warrant and then cry victim when you show the world evidence of them raiding your home. Like there's something particularly sinister about that aspect. But yeah, he was definitely very mean in his songs. There's one called "Lick 'Em Low Lisa," where he's alleging that one of the officers is either is a massive lesbo and potential secret transgender. Um, so that yeah, he's very mean to her. And there is footage of her in court, like fucking crying her eyes out, which is very good stuff. I have to say, agents of the state should be absolutely made to feel like dirt whenever possible, and Afterman was able to pull that off, so that was very good. I will say I kind of left a bit of a Chekhov's gun there originally, where I was talking about how they took a lot of his money. They miscounted apparently, and like shorted him like $500 or something when they were returning the money. So, and then he said, "Well, you're thieves. You stole from me then because you didn't give me back my money." Um, and that was one of the defamation claims against him, was that he was lying. It's like, oh, it's really harmed my reputation to be known as a thief. It's like, well, if it's true, then it doesn't count as defamation. Obviously, we think that defamation is not an actual crime or anything, because that's a form of IP. But even under the state edicts, if it's a true thing you're saying about someone, then it cannot be defamation. It's not defamation to just say something that really embarrasses someone. It's defamation if you have to like meet specific criteria, and lying about it is involved in there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as you said, obviously, regardless of, I suppose, the state edicts, obviously, even if he had defamed them by the state's, criteria, obviously we would not have supported it. So it's very good that he got off. But if he had defamed them, you know, from our perspective, that probably would have been fine as well. And in fact, probably morally good to defame law enforcement officers because they, as you said, are agents of the state. Yeah, so I guess as far as defamation law is concerned, it's a very weird subset of law, obviously, beyond just talking about the illegitimacy of it. My understanding is, and it's been a while since I did a little bit of study in this area when I was going through my tertiary education in Australia. And my understanding is that if a defamation suit is brought in Australia and it's different in the United States, then the burden of proof is actually flipped. And the assumption in the case, if it's taken to like a civil trial, is that the claims that are alleged to be defamatory are false. That is the standard, and then the the defendant, or whatever it's called, a defendant in a civil trial, I'm pretty sure. The respondent has to actually prove that the claims were true, which is a very like weird, obviously, because that's kind of almost assuming an element of guilt there, but it's also would be kind of weird to be like, well, prove these claims about you are false, because that would also be potentially trying to prove a negative. So again, look, obviously we're stepping in within the realm of state edicts, as you said, and they're not legitimate. But Zula, I was wondering, like, do you have any thoughts on you know just putting our like current law hat on for a second, or whatever, or our state edicts hat on for a second? Like, which way would you fall on? On the one hand, you have to prove that the claims you made were true as a defendant, or you have to prove the claims made about you were false. Like, how do you kind of feel about that?
Yeah, so I think if you're forward, the positive claim is definitely that John Smith is like a drunkard and he beats his wife or whatever. Whatever. Take whatever archetypal defamation case you might want. I'm saying that John Smith beats his wife, right? Um, and so that would be the positive claim. It would be on me to prove that to be the case. But that's not what the trial is about. The trial is making the positive claim that this person is a liar. Right? That's a whole new positive claim. It's sort of second order, right? So I would say that the burden of proof shouldn't be prove that your defamatory claims were in fact true, and it should be, well, prove that these are defamatory claims. I think that's going to be a lot less destructive in terms of not just justice but epistemology.
Yeah, totally agree. That was kind of my take on it. It was honestly, as I was talking about it, I was like, oh well, I guess both sides in within the context of the debate, depending on how you're framing it, are making positive claims if a defamation suit is brought. Although, I mean, obviously, the first step would be the plaintiff would have to prove that someone made those defamatory claims. Obviously, that would be the first step. But then once that's been established, then it's like, well, both sides are kind of making positive claims. But I suppose within the context, as you said, of the defamation suit, the positive claim is with the plaintiff. Wanted to go to. I know you can always change your mind is up on the speaker panel, as he most often is at the start of every one of our spaces, which is always good. Good to have him again. Did you want to jump in at all, man? With any kind of thoughts or remarks at all?
Yes. So is my mic sounding tolerable?
Yes. Yep. You're all good.
Yeah, my sound card recently broke, so I'm using a different mic. And I'm getting a new sound card. But you made a point about like defaming police officers being a good thing, but that implies a lie. So is it really good to lie about police officers? Isn't it better to just show what they do?
Well, so this is actually something I was going to bring up and kind of be, persnickety about. Defamation, like the when you were talking about like the legal term, they refer to it as defamation, but that's actually not the full term, because to defame someone just means to, you know, say something negative about their reputation. It doesn't actually imply whether that claim was true or not. So the defamation suit isn't actually just like, did you defame? Because put it this way, if I accuse Zulu of being a murderer or something, and it turns out he actually is a murderer, then, well, I have
Yeah.
defamed him. It was just that I defamed him correctly. So there's no like legal
I'm
claim
referring
against
to
him.
the concept in state positive law, which
Yeah, sure.
implies
I
lying.
mean, yeah, you're probably right. It's probably not advisable or good to lie about law enforcement officers. I was probably being a bit hyperbolic there. So, yeah, no, that's fair. But yeah, as far as like act like defame, like just calling, I suppose what I might have been, what I could kind of defend would be the fact that, for instance, the state would probably, if like a tax collector came to your house and
Mhm.
like took a bunch of your property away because you owed a debt to the state or whatever, then if you then went online and called that person a thief, the state would probably consider that to be defamatory and like
Yeah.
illegal defamatory, because it doesn't consider that person to be a thief, right? And then so if that person was to be like, hey, this person defamed me by calling me a thief, I'm just a tax collector doing my stately duties, then you'd probably get found guilty there. Like potentially, there definitely wouldn't be a truth defense to that, because the state would be like, well, no, it's not true that this guy's a thief. So, like, there is a sense in which, and this is, to be fair, this isn't what I was getting at potentially originally, but kind of on the fly, I've realised, hey, I mean, even under that kind of proviso that you're talking about, like, there could be lies in the eyes of the state that it is still good to state, for instance, that for instance, a tax collector is a thief, even though the state wouldn't consider him to be one, if that makes sense.
Could I just ask for
Right.
potentially a little bit of clarification? Because are what you're getting at is that, well, it would be bad because you're lying, in the sense that you're lying about someone, and that is like at least that is the bad part.
Um, Yeah, I mean the thing like specifically with police officers, I think they do so much other bad stuff that lying about what they do would be more damaging than like just showing what they or just not saying anything, because it's better to just show all the bad stuff that they do. Sorry.
So I just because one angle I was thinking of here is that normally it might be bad to lie about a person because you're saying like an untruthful thing or whatever.
Yeah.
But I was sort of what I was trying to angle in on is if somebody is really terrible, and let's take it away from like even state actors for a moment. Let's just say somebody's like actually like a rapist and a murderer or whatever. I think there isn't necessarily a problem in spreading rumors about them and trying to damage their reputation, especially if they're upheld as an upstanding member of the community. I don't think it's necessarily bad to try and ruin that person's reputation through whatever even if it's even if you're not saying truthful things about them, because I think the correct standard is that you shouldn't try to gain a value by cheating reality. And now this is how we would differ from the Kantians who say never ever lie ever. If the Nazi comes to your door, you got to say, yeah, there are
Yeah,
Jews in my basement.
I mean, it kind of seems like to me that you would be cheating reality in that case. But of course, there are contexts where it's good to lie, like if you're hiding a Jew against the Nazis. But yeah, if there's some bad person, why don't you show them why they're bad instead of lying, inventing up a story? Like I would like to see like an example of where it would be good.
Well, for instance, if this person is like highly protected by the community, where you're not able to bring forth the actual things that they've done horribly, because you might be persecuted for that, for instance, but you would be able to just spread like untruthful things, like, oh, I heard he's cheating on his wife, and try and like sow discord in the court or whatever, and like get him in trouble and what have you.
Okay, I guess that's fair. That's interesting.
It kind of strikes me as similar to, and again, got to be kind of careful here, but like how they got Al Capone on tax evasion despite him being like a murderer. It's like, hey, get this guy on what you can, like he's a murderer, he's a piece of shit, he deserves to go down, he deserves to be in prison. Like, get him on what you can. If he's a murderer, but you just can't prove that he did it beyond a reasonable doubt, or he's going to find a way around it, then
I would tread carefully with doing that, though. You have to kind of know what the possible outcomes could be of you lying. Like me, I mean, you could get in trouble for lying,
Yeah, and I suppose obviously the Al Capone example was like he did evade taxes, obviously, and that specific thing that he did was pretty base, but a lot of the other stuff that he did less so. Um, yeah, so look, I mean, is there
Well,
anything else?
interesting.
Oh yeah,
There's an
yeah. So go
interesting
ahead.
point, though. There's an interesting point. Since you say you'd want him to be punished for tax evasion, right?
I was just going to get some water, and yes, the space fucked up somehow.
To Liquid Zulu no context to my other account. And as a result, I nuked the space. So sorry about that. I'll have to make sure not to do that. Uh, fuck me. All right, let me get Zulu back up here. Hello.
Hello.
Things back off again. Um, sorry, as I was just telling people Zulu, I accidentally switched to my alter ego, Liquid Zulu, no context, and as a result, the space got nuked. So I'll have to make sure not to do that while we're on a space. Like it's just a complete brain fade. But anyway,
Have a separate browser for that.
this is like
Need to.
yeah. Well, I'm on my phone, so
That makes it worse. Yeah.
yes, it does. Anyway, we're back. So Zulu, you here?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me? Hello. Hello. Oh my god.
Uh,
Fuck.
I cannot hear him. Can anyone else
I
hear him?
can't. I can't hear him either.
Zulu, we cannot hear you.
Oh my god, I left. I left and
He's
rejoined.
listener now.
Fucking hell.
Hello.
So
Yes, I can hear you now, Zulu.
There we go.
Okay, so we're back. Sorry about that, everyone. That's my bad. That's not X's fault. That's my fault.
It's unfortunate because at the exact same, pretty much the same time, I went to go refill my water. So it looked like some sort of like horrible thing had happened to my chat. Like
Yeah,
I was
he
gone,
just
you were
walks
gone,
back and
everything was gone.
Okay. Well, we'll try and get back to where we were. You can always change your mind. You were speaking as when I rudely interrupted you by nuking the
I'm not,
space. So
no problem. So you're talking about this Al Capone guy. He did bad things, presumably. I haven't looked into him. And he also did tax evasion. But you said like you could basically use this tax evasion thing to punish him. But I've also heard Zulu say that if he gets like dragged to court, like in the UK, he will not like follow any of their laws. So I'm wondering if Al Capone came to the courtroom while Zulu was some not a judge, but some jurist, or I don't know what it's called. Should he or should you then use the law to basically punish him for tax evasion then?
So to add context, this basically, in the past I've been summoned for jury duty, and I just basically sent them a message back saying, "Hey, I am a radical anarcho-capitalist. I believe in natural law, and I will not vote based upon your state edicts." Something to that effect. And they said, "Well, that doesn't matter." But as it turns out, they didn't call me up, so I think it did matter a little bit. So that doesn't mean that I would never vote guilty on anybody. I'm not saying that I'm completely swearing off and I'm just going to go, no, I'm never going to vote guilty on anybody. If it was some horrific murderer, then yeah, I might vote guilty no matter what the hell they're trying to charge him with, because I just want this guy away from society and to be punished in some way, to be seen as guilty, I suppose. What I'm meaning is that if it's something that the state calls a crime, but I don't consider a crime, and they haven't alleged any actual objective crimes that this person's committed, then I will not vote guilty under any circumstances. And they can get like a hung jury or whatever. I don't care. I'm not voting guilty.
Nice. That solved it.
The obviously the other complication with that is, if this is, you'd have to get very fortunate in order to be able to utilize this. I'll vote guilty for something that, like, I don't consider a crime, but I know you're guilty of something else. Have to be a very, very specific set of circumstances, because you know the whole point of the way jury trials work is that you're not supposed to know any outside information about that person. So if they're not being alleged within the course of the trial to have done anything like actually criminal, like, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to find that out. And you would be almost certainly breaking the rules of how jury trials work. Now, obviously, like, do we care about that? I mean, no, but it's also something that you could get in trouble for, is for contempt of court if you do like background research
And
outside of court.
that's, by the way, some people do uh, try to recommend to anarcho-capitalists and libertarians that they should lie, and say that yes, they will be all normal, they'll be a normal juror, so that they can then do jury nullification. Now, I think this is a very risky endeavor, because normally they'll have some sort of line like, do you agree to, vote based upon the laws of blah, 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 so on and so forth, right? They'll have some sort of line like that at some point in the questioning. And if you say yes to that, and then you later, try to nullify, then they can get you for that because you lied to them, right? But if you say no, I do not agree to that, to those terms, then they'll say okay, and then you're not going to be on that jury.
Well, I'm not so sure about that, because the first part of that, because my understanding is that juries don't need to explain like their verdicts. Basically, like, again, this is under the common law and the understandings of most Western countries. If you're on a jury and you find someone not guilty, or guilty, you don't have to explain yourself to anyone. Like, people will give interviews and stuff to journalists if they want to, but there's actually no like legal requirement to give a justification. So you could like safely nullify a verdict, even having quote unquote lied about, or not just quote unquote, actually lied about what you were going to do. But at the end of the day, the state can't force you to justify why you gave a specific verdict. So even if the evidence was overwhelming, for this non-crime that you then nullified, if you found them not guilty, then the state has to just be like, well, shit, I guess we picked the wrong guy on our jury team, in this case, but bad luck. There's not much we can really do about it.
Well, this is very true, but still, then you have this basically like a razor of Damocles, where they can, if that ever comes out, let's say you're like drunk one night at a bar and you're like, yeah, and then I nullified, you're trying to brag or whatever. Then it's like, oh, hello there, I am listening in. I'm a bailiff actually. So let's go chat about that for a little bit, because you're specifically you lied to the court. Then, they're and like I'm not sure the exact ways in which it would go down. I'm not a lawyer or anything, but these people who advocate this, they generally also advocate that you try to sway the rest of the jury towards nullification, because then it can actually like work. If it's just one dissenter, I think they can get like retrials and stuff. But yeah, if you're then loud and proud about it in that way, I'm not sure if like other jurors can like rat on you for having lied or whatever. I'm not sure if that can happen, but it's entirely possible.
Yeah, so I would still, my understanding again is still like, even if you, because I'll give you an example. So OJ Simpson, right, obviously famously acquitted in a criminal trial for murder, despite a fair chunk of evidence demonstrating his guilt. And my understanding is that there have been jurors that have given trials, given interviews after the fact, in which they claimed that, yeah, the reason why we acquitted him was because we wanted to get one back after after the Rodney King like assaulters, the cops were acquitted. So we wanted to get one back for the blacks by acquitting OJ. there's definitely been interviews in which when jurors have said that other jurors did that, and I believe that there have been jurors that have kind of been like, yeah, that's kind of why we did it. And yet there'll never be any charges brought against them because, like, it's not illegal to acquit someone because they're black in the United States, funnily enough, or because they're white.
Yeah, it's entirely
But you
possible
would
that
be right.
it's entirely possible that you're right about that. Again, I'm not
Yeah,
super
no,
knowledgeable.
that's and again, disclaimer: not legal advice. Not legal advice. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not your lawyer. Do not do what Monhop says if you're summoned to a jury. The one part I will agree with you on though is if you were if you were sitting in a jury like room with just the other jurors and deciding on the case, and you were to be like, hey, I know this guy's guilty like all you do, but I want to nullify it, they could take that to the bailiff and to the judge and be like, hey, this guy's an improper juror, like get rid of him. And they might either, take you out of the jury pool and use one of the substitutes, or it might just be a mistrial, depending on the circumstances. So, yeah, it's unless you happen to get in a room with 11 other anarcho capitalists, publicly announcing that you're planning to nullify within the jury room is probably just going to get you kicked out of the trial. That's my understanding of what would typically happen.
Which, if that ever does happen, if some defense attorney somehow manages to get 12 anarcho-capitalists onto a jury, my hat's off to you. Like, well fucking done, bro.
Yeah, finding like the 1% of the 1% to be like out of a representative sample of the like, yeah, I'd be to be 12 out of a representative sample would be very, very impressive to do. I don't know, is it even probably not even mathematically possible in some regions. I don't know, like if you were in a small town, there's not going to be 12 ANCAPs in that town to then be selected to a jury pool. So it's physically impossible to do for some people. But, as you said, if you manage to do it, then yeah, hats off to you. Did you have any like super chats or anything that you needed to read out or anything? Or
I do not believe so. Let me just check. No.
damn, no one's being generous today, guys. No, I'm only joking.
My heart breaks.
Yeah. We'll go to. You should be selfless for Liquid Zulu. Be an altruist. Donate your money to Zulu now. Yeah, obviously only joking. Let me go to Zernix next, and then we'll hit up. You can always change your mind again shortly. But Zernix, welcome to the panel. And yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think I think this might be a confusion. I think at least in the U.S., when it comes to juries, you have the selection process, and I think once you're selected for like the jury itself for a case, I don't think you can be replaced unless there is some extraneous like circumstance, like you're being threatened. They find out that you are doing something illegal. I do know for jury nullification, they do not inform you that is a power that the jury has for whatever reason, just to avoid people misusing it. But you can use it. And there's been few cases in the United States where it's been used and there's not really an issue. If you say it during the jury selection process, I think, then they'll immediately kick you out because they don't want you to do that and potentially taint the pool with the idea that people can nullify whatever verdict.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, it's going to depend on the specifics of how you go. Like, if you're like coming to the like jury and being like your other jurors and being like, hey, I want to try and nullify this verdict. It's gonna you're gonna have to go about it the right way. It would be my suggestion in order to ensure that goes properly for you. I guess would be my position. But you are right. You are correct that there's no like criminal liability for. Again, you can acquit someone for whatever reason you want, and you never have to justify it. Again, if the state follows its own rules, I should say.
There is a fun activity you can perform on this topic, which a friend of a friend did this in Turkey actually. A fun activity you can perform, especially if you're in the United States, is you can print out a bunch of flyers explaining what jury nullification is, and stand outside the front of a courthouse and hand them out to everybody going inside. And and then you can potentially do a lot of interesting funnies that way. And there's really it's not illegal to tell people what jury nullification is. It'll piss off the court a whole lot, but there's really not a whole lot they can do about it. So definitely, if you want to have some sort of an impact in that way, because studies do show they've done like mock trials before, and just the knowledge of jury nullification makes people vote differently. So it could be a very fun like weekend activity for you to print out a bunch of flyers explaining exactly what jury nullification is, and then just just hand them out to everybody who's going into a courtroom. Into the courthouse, because obviously if you're inside, then they can go like, "Hey, fuck off, get out of here." But if you're just outside, it's public. It's a public space, right? They can't tell you not to use your First Amendment rights or whatever. And then you can potentially get some objectively innocent people off.
Incredibly based. Oh, Xenix, did you want to come back in on that at all, or?
Yeah. I think there was a case where I forget what was the case. Forget the guy's name, where he shot a guy because he was a karate teacher or whatever, and I think they acquitted him of the crime, even though it was caught on video. He murdered the guy.
Well, to be clear, he didn't shoot him because he was a karate teacher.
No, because he was. I mean, I don't want to toss.
Right,
I don't know if this.
Okay,
yeah, I'm just trying to be careful. I'm giving the cases. I just don't. He was, let's say, a PDF. Yeah. So
you're talking about the case where the dad, like, and it was, yeah, I know the one you're
at an
talking
airport.
about. Yeah. Okay. I was slow on the uptake there, but
yeah, I was just trying to be careful not to get this place potentially.
No, I was like, what the fuck? But then Zulu, yeah, okay, I get what you're getting at now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one case where he got acquitted, even though there was like a mountain of evidence to technically charge him for whatever he did. And I don't know if jury nullification was used there, but I believe the jury just decided to like not charge him at all for anything.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate that. Do we want to go? We'll go back to you can always change your mind. I believe he had his hand up. Doesn't have his hand up on my screen at the moment, but you can always change your mind. Did you want to jump back in at all, or?
Yeah, I heard something about like that we are very few, but I'm curious if there's been any statistics done on how many we are in different places. Like I think we should be growing, and at least for some while we should have been. We'd have to have been exponentially growing at some point, I think. But I'm really not sure like how many we are.
I mean, I've never met another ANCAP in real life, just like out in the wild before. I mean, it's not like I go around just asking people on the street, like, "Are you an ANCAP?"
What's wrong with you? Why would you do that?
Yeah, I know. That's what I should spend my days doing, just walking around the streets. Um, I genuinely have no idea like what the actual percentage of the population is. I'd have to fathom it's less than less than 1%. That would be my assumption. Is like I don't even know what percentage of people have even heard of anarcho-capitalism, like let alone support it. So that would be my only claim in that realm, would be that it is a very, very small percentage of people, like less than 1 in 100, I would have thought, but I'm not sure.
I figure it's like more than 1% in some places, like maybe in New Hampshire. And
Yeah,
maybe
for sure. Yeah. Depends on the place. Like, yeah, you're right. New Hampshire, there'd definitely be, that's kind of their whole thing, is obviously the concentration of people in that one region. But the consequence of that is if you're taking people out of other areas and into that area, then you're going to have less, ANCAPs, around other places. So that's where, it could potentially, just because there's a certain number of ANCAPs across the total population, there might actually be less in the rest of, say the United States, because so many of them that do exist are being encouraged to
Well,
move to New Hampshire.
I think they are more efficacious, the ANCAPs, when they are more together, more able to communicate and trade and all that. Doesn't have to be exactly New Hampshire, but like be able to short distance apart and all that, to go to like all the events there and whatever. I think that's important. Of course, there you'd have less libertarians other places, but an isolated libertarian can't do that much compared to someone who can cooperate with another capitalist, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally agree with you. I'm a big fan of, the kind of concentration of libertarians and, ANCAPs. That strategy, I think, is like something that we should definitely be advocating for. Obviously, the tough part with it is there's a lot of opportunity costs that come with, moving your, place of residence, obviously. And so, you know, just because you're an ANCAP, it could be like, well, yeah, I'm an ANCAP and I want to be in a more free place, but also, all my family and everyone I've ever known lives in this, place that I'm in at the moment. And yeah, it's a status, hellhole by comparison to New Hampshire, but everyone I love lives here. So it's very, very difficult for me to be able to justify, uprooting my family to go to New Hampshire. But, that's where we need to uh, set about lowering those opportunity costs, I guess, and making it as easy as possible for people to move there, which is what, and at the very least, making it as easy as possible for people who are in a position to move there to be able to move there. So, um, definitely agree. For people who it's a possibility for, you should absolutely be, trying to move there if you can.
Yeah, cool. Should we? Is there more to speak about regarding the Afro Man case, or are we like able to discuss anything going forward?
No,
Or
no, no. I'm always of the mind with this thing that it's an open discussion. We kind of set topics to, get a conversation started. But
right?
more than happy for you to take it in whatever direction you want. If you want.
Yeah, Eli is next, I think.
Oh, for sure. Unless I was thinking if you had something else, but if you're all good, we can move on to Zernix or Eli. Yeah, please jump back in, man.
Yeah, actually, just to shift the topic, I actually had an interesting conversation recently. Is there a possibility of such a thing as an ANCAP billionaire, like current, like today? Could there be such a thing, or that's not feasible?
Well, I mean,
Yeah, Zer,
if
you
an
want
ANCAP gets $1 billion, then yeah, they could be an ANCAP billionaire. Like, it's definitely possible. I don't know if there are any. There probably aren't. I assume what you're getting at is like, well, could you actually make $1 billion without kind of petitioning for state funds or what have you?
Correct. Yeah, like try not to be involved in the system.
And like, yeah, I think it's definitely possible. Like, I mean, like let's say, for the sake of argument, that like Satoshi Nakamoto or one of those early Bitcoin guys, if they turned out to be an ANCAP, well, definitely a billionaire at this point if they've kept their Bitcoin.
Oh, that's a fair point. Yeah, I mean, I guess I was just thinking about it. Just for like the movement case, it would be great if you could identify some like just like other movements use billionaires to fund operations to lower opportunity costs for grassroots movements. Is there somebody out there with the funds to go ahead and help continue pushing the ideology?
Well, there definitely are like a lot of like big donors to these. I mean, that's where the institutions get their money from, right? They got a lot of these big whale donors. Now, I'm not sure if there are any like super super radical ones out there. At least I'm not aware of anybody in particular who's like, you know, funding like specifically, you know, really grassroots like radical action. It seems to be mostly, I mean, it's most obviously the wealthier people will be like the boomers because they've had more time to accumulate wealth, and they tend to be a little more slow to adapt. So they're going to be like, oh, the way you do politics, Sonny, is you put your money into a political action committee or some sort of institution, and then the wheels of democracy will turn for you. You know, going to be stuff like that. It's not going to be anything too rousing, I would suspect, unless you get you get a special sort of rich person, which I mean there probably are plenty out there. I mean, like there are people who have given a lot of money to my channel over the years to this point. So there definitely are wealthy people out there who are interested in more, you know, interesting pursuits, I should say. Yeah, I couldn't tell you any specifics on that.
Appreciate it. And I was just because I was looking at the 100 like billionaires, and I was like, who out here is potentially close enough to the ideology that you could convince them, hey, you know, money.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with that though is because I actually looked into this at one point. I was like, how like feasible would it be to just like if you were like a hype ultra rich guy to just like start setting up a a Gold's Gulch type thing where you just like invite people into the region and you're like, hey, you know, ANCAPs come here, you know, statists stay away type thing. And the problem is the costs actually get like really, really prohibitively high incredibly quickly for doing that sort of thing. You know, if you're trying to, you know, have that level of influence, it's just extremely, extremely difficult to do. And it costs, yeah, a great deal of money to actually be able to do it. So that's where, yeah, that's where the difficult part kind of comes in there
Yeah,
is
sure, the
all the
opportunity
funding
cost is
involved.
high.
Yeah.
Sure, the opportunity cost is high, but if you look at, like, for example, a bunch of communists, they're always handing out flyers, always just like doing whatever they can to just get young people anything. They will just do it at any expense, and you can see it. This is why you see more younger people falling for the lie. And so I'm just like saying, like, well, if there isn't anybody out there doing the counter work, then you're kind of just sitting on your hands, you know?
No, I totally get what you mean. We need to be, yeah, absolutely. There's room for, you know, activism in that space. But it's just, yeah, it's very, very difficult to do because of a lot of the, you know, the costs that are involved in doing that sort of thing. But no, I agree. It would be great if we could have, you know, an actual ANCAP and not just like, you know, the Koch brothers being the one and only kind of pro liberty you know, kind of donor out there that everyone, you know, harps on about. But no, I appreciate that, man. Unless you have anything else, we'll keep it rolling. We've got William Aston here. How's it going, man? Did you want to jump in at all?
Hello. Yeah, is my mic working? Is everything sounding good?
Yes, yeah, all good.
Wonderful, thank you. I have a couple things to say, so please cut me off if I overstay my welcome. But most recently, regarding libertarian political action and handing out flyers approaching this sort of thing, I don't want to speak for Zulu, but as I'm aware, like the libertarian zeitgeist has like moved toward a top-down political approach, where effectively try to convince the philosophers first and then let it trickle down from there. Um, is this accurate? Would this be an accurate response to why libertarians largely aren't doing um, on the ground flyer handing out type stuff?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say that's definitely a reason why probably not super essential to be trying to hand out flyers to people. Um, Yeah, because ultimately that's all downstream of the more fundamental things. But I mean, if people, there's always going to be branch cutters, and they can go hack away at the branches all they want. But yeah, the real work is going to be done bringing a chainsaw right to the roots.
Right, I see that. Regarding the top-down ideological approach to political action, I haven't seen much. This is just like a content suggestion almost, but I haven't seen much address for Slavoj Žižek or other leftist philosophers that are distinctly anti-ideology. And it seems if you even say the word ideology in a public area, a lot of people laugh because the broader public conscious seems to be anti-ideology. I expect largely downstream of philosophers like Zizek. So I wonder if it would be productive to attack this whole anti-ideology stance by itself first before even approaching the question of like primacy of consciousness, primacy of reality, but to just get people thinking more about ideology and thinking about philosophy, if that would be a good prior step to anything downstream of that.
Sure. So I mean, I'm not too familiar with Zizek, but just on its face, it sounds like pretty much a self-terminating philosophy to be anti-ideology and laughing at the very notion of ideology. It strikes me that this is very much indicative of a bust phase philosophy. Like, this is not constructive at all. And these non-constructive philosophies, they are less urgent to respond to than constructive philosophies. Now I'll explain what I mean by that. So there's a common analogy, this common like metaphor you'll see, that like the history of philosophy is just Aristotle and Plato battling it out over and over and over again, right? The way I model this in my head is sort of like a business cycle. We've got some boom phase followed by a bust. The booms are from fiat constructive periods, like with Plato. Plato, he was definitely a constructive philosopher. He wasn't a skeptic at all. But he was building up a big house of cards, just a big lies, right? And these lies necessarily run up against reality and necessitate some sort of bust phase philosophy, like with the skeptics. So what you really need is a true constructive philosopher, like an Aristotle, where you're actually building up true philosophy, and then you don't have busts following from it. So the last big constructive philosopher, I would say, apart from Ayn Rand, would be Immanuel Kant. He was definitely a constructive philosopher. He's perhaps one of the most, broadly integrated philosophers of all time. Like, he was a very creative individual, and he built up a huge and very tightly connected system of philosophy. Now, I would argue, and other objectivists would argue, that this was all a fiat system. So this necessitates a bust phase, and you see this all over the place. Like with the pragmatists, where they invert what it means for something to be true, because, well, the truth, these theories of truth, they've just failed. We can't know anything. Right? And this is a direct implication of Kant's philosophy, that you can't know anything. So it's very clear to see how you get from that into skepticism, even though he was an answer to the previous skeptic wave, which culminated in Hume. He necessitates a following skeptic wave. So these sort of highly downstream philosophies from Kant are a lot less important to directly answer, unless you get like a really solid encapsulation of the whole thing, like with a David Hume. Right, David Hume, he's a lot more important to answer than anything else. Like, ultimately, you do have to answer the skeptics in some way. But you can often just completely sidestep them if you just answer the previous constructive philosopher. If you answer Immanuel Kant, then all of his children fall with him. You no longer need to answer the pragmatists, because their whole project It's like, well, we all know from Kant that you can't know anything, so who cares about knowledge anymore? So that is sort of, I think, where the important sort of advance is. Now, I certainly wouldn't begrudge anybody if they did some specific analysis of Zizek and tried to point out what his errors are, where he gets them from, and so on and so forth. I certainly wouldn't begrudge anybody that. But I don't know necessarily enough about him and to say whether that's a good idea. And on its face, it seems very much self-terminating, like with most bust type philosophies. They're really it died. If you've got an ideology that says ideology is bad, that's not gonna sustain itself for very long.
One would imagine, right?
Well, I mean, it's able to
Sadly,
survive.
Like very compelling,
like it can
right,
limp along
for some reason,
right? Because there's nothing better, right? That's how these busts go, right? People, it's like, well, we've got nothing better, so I guess we just gotta go with this. But if you get an actual constructive philosopher along, like an Ayn Rand, well, then there's now actually something positive to look at rather than just a sea of negative.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Tying for a slight different topic, tying in with the discussion regarding lying, particularly with the Afroman case. I don't think there was an agreement on whether or not lying was ethical or unethical on the objectivist stance, but I have a couple reasons to believe that it's objectively unethical. Part of this is just that it immediately strikes me as an action or a category of actions that that assume primacy of consciousness. If not necessarily an aggressive action, we know fraud is aggressive, but if lying itself is not necessarily aggressive, it is at least assuming primacy of consciousness with one's own actions, which sounds like a self-contradiction in the most like basic form. Furthermore, Hoppe's argument from argument also seems to prove that lying would be unjustifiable in the sense that arguments would presume truthhood from both parties. It would assume that both parties are attempting to find truth. If any one party were to argue that spreading falsehood were ethical, they would be in self-contradiction, as both parties must be attempting to find a truth for it to be a argument. So I'm curious what you guys think about that, or if lying can have a justification in the objectivist framework.
Sure. So I think the correct standard for when it's bad to lie is that you're trying to cheat reality to gain a value. I know that's
right.
That's the link with the primacy of consciousness. Is if you're like, well, if I just plug my ears and stick my head in the sand, then I can get whatever the hell I want, right? That's clearly primacy of consciousness. Like, if I pretended I was qualified for a job I'm actually not qualified for. That would be primacy of consciousness. It's as if my lie can somehow make it such that I can do that job, even when I can't. So the areas where it's proper to lie, there's like a few examples. There's the classic of the Nazis come to your house, you're hiding Jews in the basement, and they say, "Hey, do you have any Jews here by any chance?" And you say no. Now this is proper because they're effectively there are a few layers to this. They're effectively bringing in force. So you're not actually in a dialogue with them anymore, right? They're coming in and effectively putting a gun to your head and saying, "Hey, say that the sky is red," and you say, "Okay, the sky is red." Like that. That's effectively what they're doing. So that's not.
I see.
You're not even in a dialogue. You're not even making proper propositions. You're effectively, in Hoppe's terms, you would be babbling, right? There's also another angle you can look at this from, one which I very much like, and I actually got this from a tweet This isn't. I didn't get this from a philosophy textbook or anything, but I think it points at something true, which is that the question itself, in some sense, is a lie. Like when they say, "Are there any Jews here?" They're not actually asking just out of curiosity or anything. They're not actually just like, "Hey, by the way, have you seen any Jews about?" Their true question is, "Hey, are there Jews around? And can I come in your house and check out your basement so I can murder those Jews? Is that all right?" It's perfectly proper to answer that. No. No to your whole question, not just the part you said.
Precisely. So, okay, I guess my stance was, or my argument was more so about, I guess I just misunderstood what lying means a little bit. I wouldn't even qualify telling the Nazi that there are no Jews under your floorboards um, as a lie because they are already inciting aggression. So, I guess what would be the phrase for the category of action regarding creating falsehood in other people's minds in order to cheat reality? And in my head, that word was lying. Whereas, quote unquote, lying to the Nazi isn't exactly lying. It's closer to self defense in the way that some violence is justifiable in the sense if it's defensive, right?
Yeah, you might be right, because those are like separate concepts. So I'm not sure it's
Yeah.
necessarily the best thing to have them both under the same term. It's almost like there could be like the broader term lying, where it's just whenever you say an untrue thing. But yeah, it's definitely perhaps some linguistic effort needs to be put in to try and untangle these completely separate things, because you're right, it is a completely different situation if you're saying to the Nazi that there's no Jews versus me saying that Monhop is a black woman, right? That's a completely separate category of things.
Well, that they are a separate category because one's true and one's false, right?
I see.
No, look, appreciate that. Did we want to? Because I don't see any other. William, did you have anything else you wanted to bring up? Sorry, man. Before we move on, more than
Sure, I
welcome
have a
to keep
list
chatting.
before me because I've been wanting to get on this
Yeah,
remnant
look, man.
for a
I mean,
while.
there's no one else with their hand up. So, like, I'll
Bless.
just. I'm happy for you to just keep rolling through because it's good discussion. So please keep going.
I appreciate it. So, onto aesthetics. If if we're open to talking about objectivist aesthetics, I'm not sure if that's been discussed before.
No, that's fine.
Okay, sure. I find that a lot of media, particularly critically acclaimed media, it seems internally contradictory. There's so much, all the way back, if you want to talk about like Jung's theory of self-realization, all the way back to like early mythology. There's so much about what seems to me as immediately internally contradictory. I think the oldest example is like the Ouroboros, right? The snake that eats itself, in death it is born, yada yada, right? I'm trying to understand why these concepts are so compelling and why they frequently nest themselves in highly influential works and why these works tend to flow down to public conscious so effectively, as they're immediately just incoherent, it would seem, yet they're so compelling. I'm wondering if objectivist aesthetics has an explanation, at least for why they're popular, or if there's a reason for why objectivity ought to prevail in these creations of art.
Sure. So I will say, just personally, I think there is something to, like, the maps of meaning, Jordan Peterson's view of like the meta myth. There's potentially something there. It's been too long since I've actually read maps of meaning, so I'm not sure exactly what that would be. But I remember it's very much linked to the stuff you're saying. But as far as objectivist epistemology is concerned, objectivist aesthetics is concerned, it can absolutely account for why like contradictory art would be popular. And it's because it's a reflection of the philosophy of the artist. And most philosophies that anybody has ever had throughout all of time, most of them have been embroiled in contradiction. I mean, right back to the beginning, like pretty much the first philosopher is going to be Thales, and then right after Thales, like basically the second philosopher in any history of philosophy is Heraclitus, and his whole philosophy is built up on contradiction being the primary thing. This is entirely common. Even though people, if you ask them, they'll, explicitly state that they're against contradiction. But implicitly, across the board, they will accept legion contradictions, and it doesn't seem to bother them at all. And art is, of course, like a very deep and personal reflection, so it's a lot harder to lie with art than it is with your tongue.
Right. So essentially, art is downstream of the philosophy of the day, and therefore these internally contradictory pieces of art, this imagery, becomes popular because of the
Moreover,
philosophy of the day.
popular art is reflective of the philosophy of the day, but a particular piece of art is just reflective of the artist's philosophy.
Sure. Right. Okay. I see. Thank you.
Too easy. We will keep things rolling. I want to hear from Pow next. He's got his hand up. So, Pow, thanks for coming on. Please jump in and go ahead.
Okay, hello. I guess I heard like one guy say that there's no billionaire ANCAPs, and I mean, like, I guess Jack Dorsey claims to be an ANCAP. He used to be the CEO of Twitter when it was. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay,
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, but he was like the CEO of Twitter when it was like super woke. I guess it's not really like he might be reformed, if you will. And another guy who's a bit more interesting is Balaji. He's not a billionaire, but he is like a multi-millionaire, and he does fund like he does try to fund like private city networks, and he is libertarian leaning. Like I don't think he's like philosophically an ANCAP. I think he's more so like just a consequentialist ANCAP where he thinks like Austrian economics is the way to go, and I think he looks at it like you can have a government be a corporation, and that government can be like, I guess, can provide the things, provide services, and like you can sign a contract essentially saying like, yeah, I'll pay 5% income tax and things like that, which I don't necessarily agree with, but he is like, I think directionally ANCAP, if you will. And I guess like, yeah, that's kind of just what I wanted to say. Because I heard that one guy say that there was no billionaire ANCAPs, and I kind of just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, I remember Dorsey posting a link to Man Economy State, Anatomy of the State, like a while back now, and everyone kind of lost their mind about it. And I was like, oh, it's kind of cool, I guess, but not a huge.
Would have been better if you stayed CEO of Twitter and used Twitter as a propaganda machine to slowly turn people into ANCAPs over
that
time.
would be pretty based.
Like he literally had access to one of the most powerful institutions in the world, and that would have been like the ideal, like especially for politics, Twitter would have been like the ideal spreader of ANCAP philosophy if you just slightly tweak the algorithms to boost ANCAPs.
Yeah, well, that would be great.
Yeah,
I know it seems like, like Elon has expressed some kind of, leanings in our direction, but they're certainly not strong enough for him to like, and they're not enough to outweigh his desire to, have state contracts, and also, have his, businesses protected by, tariffs and the sort that prevent him from being outcompeted by the Chinese. But
I will
he's
say,
kind of
like this is
Yeah, go ahead.
one very positive thing which could come about if there was some actual like anarcho-capitalist region. Like let's say New Hampshire seceded and dissolved its government. Right? If there was a region like that, you could definitely see like even an Elon Musk type, who aren't necessarily anarchists themselves, but like they have these capitalist sympathies where it's like, yeah, let's see this experiment. It's like the American experiment. Even like countries which weren't totally communist, but were like more socialist leaning. They were like, yeah, let's try and support this socialist experiment they've got going on in Russia, right? And you could definitely see like an Elon Musk, if there wasn't some anarchist region, trying to support that and like, yeah, let's let this capitalist experiment succeed. Let's not try and trample that. So like that could be a very positive thing. Like it doesn't even necessarily have to be full on anarcho-capitalists only supporting it.
Yeah, and I mean, there's like, are you familiar with economic development zones, where it's like there's like, it's basically some countries which are like constitutionally socialist. They have these things where it's like a zone where
Like
they
Macau.
allow like, yeah, like not 100% Ancapistan, but it's like
No, Macau.
There's much more. Yeah, Macau is one of those, and like they're like, China has a lot of them, like for specific things. Like they have like their like deregulated like specific like energy zone, or like their deregulated fabrication zone. But it's like there's places like Honduras which had these things where you could just buy a bunch of land from them, and you had to employ Hondurans. It's like still like there's still some status regulations, but it's like, other than that, it's like you can do whatever you want in terms of business operations on it. And I mean, I'm thinking of a thing like this. It's like Elon Musk, for example, his whole thing is to colonize Mars, and he has in the past stated things that are I don't want to say like anarchist, but he has stated things which are very clearly not against the like current formation of the state. Like he said, he supports direct democracy, which is, I mean, obviously like wrong, but it is some like for colonizing Mars, he supports direct democracy, which is some admission that the current status quo would be horrible for governance. And he does flirt with some libertarian ideas. Like he seems like a Chicago school economist, which is like libertarian leaning, I guess.
I do recall him saying that about Mars, how it would be a direct democracy, and I was just thinking, like, do you really want your oxygen supply on a hostile planet to be the maintenance of that to be decided by direct democracy? Are you sure about that?
Yeah,
I'm not
It's
so
interesting
sure
because he
about
doesn't
that.
run his business as a direct democracy. Like,
well, yes.
No.
And do you guys know who Curtis Yarvin is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he had a meeting with Elon Musk because this is when Elon Musk was raging against I guess Trump for like that 1 week period, and then he had a meeting with Curtis Yarvin. And Curtis Yarvin's like, yeah, when you colonize Mars, you're gonna run it through SpaceX. Like you're gonna be the absolute monarch of it. Like you're not gonna spend like $1 trillion like trying to conquer a coal ass planet and just let it let it be a direct democracy. Like you don't run a company like that.
Curtis Yarvin is like honestly he's like evil, kind of like democracy is evil, but it's also deceptive, right? But he's like for feudalism.
He's familiar with. He used to be a libertarian, right? And then he read the libertarians and were like, I'll just turn libertarianism and make it like evil monarchy instead.
Yeah.
Before we continue, I do have 2 super chats to read.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta go. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, man.
So both from the Lazy Fae, for $5 each. So thank you very much. So first one, tax season took most of this week's super chat money. So there you go. That explains why I'm getting. The U.S. government has foiled me once more. It means my fans can't give as many super chats, unfortunately. And then the second one, pardon me, talking about I presume the boom bust cycle of philosophy I was talking about before. It's akin to the failure of the new atheists, who were primarily concerned with what they were tearing down over building a meaningful replacement. Yeah, I mean, the new atheists, or the atheist movement in general, it's riddled with skeptics. They even use that as like a badge of honor. It's like, we're skeptics. I'm a skeptic. Like that's their big badge of honor, is to be a skeptic, and it shows. They're all just nominal essentialists for the most part.
Yeah, despite being an atheist, I find myself at least more sympathetic to the religious people who can at least accept that there is the possibility of knowledge and that there is the possibility of objective morality. Like the as you said, the atheist skeptics just really piss me off. And I think that again, it's fine to describe yourself as an atheist as a descriptor, but I think building your philosophy around the negation of some proposition is kind of I don't like it. I mean, now that I say that, I guess we do kind of build ours around the non-aggression principle, but I think we also kind of make a positive case for the NAP, whereas the atheist
Yeah, or you
like,
can call it the first comer principle.
yeah,
as
well,
well.
exactly. You could rephrase it, but I think as well, at the very least, we do build a positive case for the NAP, whereas the new atheist type will just be, my entire ideology is just you can't prove to me that God is real, so and that's kind of it. That's all there is to it, which I consider to be similar to what Zulu said, kind of ridiculous and kind of an anti-philosophy almost in a sense. We'll keep it moving. I want to hear from Acorn next, and then we'll keep things rolling. But Acorn, thanks for coming on once again, man. And yeah, please go ahead.
Hello. I missed the first 40 minutes, so I'm not too sure what you guys discussed at the start. But while I was listening, earlier I heard a discussion on aesthetics and contradictions in aesthetics. So I have a question. What do you think about apparent contradictions that aren't true contradictions? And to give an example to elaborate what I mean by that, so an example of an apparent contradiction is Ayn Rand was against taxation and state social security, yet later on in life she collected social security funded by taxation. This seems contradictory on the surface, but when you interrogate it further, it's actually her taking back the tax money. So to bring this into aesthetics, in media, a lot of people like characters that have apparently contradictory attributes. For example, a badass fighter who's also a gentle carer. So I guess my first question is there necessarily a problem with this?
So it depends on what specifically you're trying to encapsulate. So you might be trying to use the apparent contradiction to kind of shove in the reader's face and like show like, hey, this thing actually isn't a contradiction. Now, you obviously do have to be careful with that type of thing, and a lot of these will be built on, potentially unchecked premises, and a really solid artist will kind of force you to check those premises as you're consuming the art piece.
So are you trying to say that there is some cases when it's done well and some cases when it's done bad? If so, like, what's the standard?
Well, so the standard, first, so very briefly, for those who don't know, the theory of objectivist aesthetics is, on an aesthetic level, all that matters is how well, in a certain sense, they have concretized the philosophy in question. Now, for a full objective evaluation of an art piece, you also include whether or not the philosophy is true. So it's done well if it does indeed successfully further the concretization of the art piece. And it's done poorly if it doesn't do that.
Okay, thank you for your answer.
No worries.
Cheers. Well, hang on, let me get a couple other people up on the stage. I know you had another topic, and I actually can't remember what it was now, that you mentioned to me that you wanted to discuss.
Hassan went to Cuba.
Yes, yeah. So, the Hassan and a bunch of communists going over to Cuba, and then, well, it's not actually that funny because didn't a bunch of people in a hospital die because they used like a whole bunch of electricity or something?
Yeah, they wanted to have like a concert with that kneecap, that Irish I don't know, musician group, which is, I mean, yeah, it's terrible that those people died, but I mean, also very funny. That like they're, it's the most, you know, you if you had that in like an Ayn Rand novel, people would be like, oh, I mean, that's a bit on the nose of showing like how champagne socialists act. It's a bit on the nose.
Literally, just a bunch of socialists rock up and people just start dying, and it's like that would never happen.
Like literally, I mean, people need to understand. Literally, they had a concert with like music blasting and like light shows and everything in like their 5-star hotel. And meanwhile, the entire town has gone into a blackout. The hospital's gone dark. Everybody who was on a ventilator died. There's like footage of doctors like manually pumping ventilators for like newborn babies and shit. And they're going around saying like how Cuban medicine is like light years ahead of like US medicine. It's like, oh my god, they got a cure for cancer, they got a cure for Alzheimer's. It's whilst they're saying this and having like a party, they're sucking all the power from the hospital and everybody's dying. It is fundamentally like you couldn't write that any better. And you know, they're going around with all their like designer clothing and everything. Like, I mean, what are they like even? How do you look at that and not go, okay, well, they could be doing more? And I understand, like they always post that meme where it's like, oh, you live in a society and you know, and you want to improve things and blah 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 blah. But on their philosophy, they're not entitled to any of this wealth. Right? It would be fine if a capitalist was saying, oh yeah, no, I don't want people starving on the street, but I mean, ultimately this is my money, and so I'm going to keep it. They don't think that this is their money. On their philosophy, it should be redistributed, right? From each according to his ability to each according to his need. That's their philosophy. That's the philosophy of altruism. So they should be selling everything they own. They should be living on bare subsistence and giving everything else away to charity. Right? I believe it's Peter Singer makes this argument. They should be doing that. Hassan should not be going to Cuba with $900 glasses and like designer clothes and everything. He shouldn't be doing that, right? On his philosophy, on the philosophy of his fan base and everything, he should sell all of those assets in order to give it up to the Cubans and whoever else needs it, right? From each according to his ability, to each according to his need. That need is a claim on his property. He has no objection on his philosophy if a group of Cubans ravaged him, took all his stuff, and sold it off. He would have no objection to any of that on his viewpoint. So that's the contradiction, and it is, you know, it's so beautiful to see that contradiction playing out in reality, where it's the results of socialism versus the socialists. What you actually get when you have no property is Cuba, and the socialists who are advocating that America follow Cuba, they want to keep all their property, right? That is the contradiction at play here, and it's a very disgusting thing to do. And you know, for many, I just as one more point before anybody else chimes in, like their whole claim around Cuba is that they're so poor not because of the socialism, but because of U.S. embargo, right? It's because they've been cut off from the rest of the world. That's why they're so poor. But their philosophy has it that poverty isn't the natural state or anything, which you overcome with production and ownership. No, their philosophy is that poverty is caused by capitalism. It is the exploitation of the workers. That's what causes poverty, right? But then why isn't Cuba so much wealthier? Because surely trade with capitalist nations, that just implies that the Cubans are getting exploited, right? They don't like that with any other countries. Like, you know, if oil companies go into Africa and trade for the oil, it's like they've exploited this African country, right? They say that plenty of times. But when it comes to Cuba, when Cuba gets cut off from capitalism, somehow that results in poverty. It's this double thing that they have, this double speak, which is that's part of the program. They believe that contradictions are true, so you should expect this sort of thing to occur.
Absolutely.
sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Zernik, yeah, jump in, man. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think you're just misconstruing that the state allowed him to have the internet and the 5-star hotel. So it's not a contradiction. The people wanted it, according to him.
Sorry, what was that?
I'm saying that to him, on his stream, he was saying that the state demanded that he stay at a 5-star hotel, that he had no choice in the matter. It was the state's choice to give him the 5-star hotel and the internet.
Yes, so that is false. So I know his claim is that he's not allowed to stay at certain places. He had to stay there because of the U.S. government. But that 5-star hotel is actually on the list that the U.S. government has where he's not allowed to stay there. So he's lying.
I mean, regardless, like, it would kind of be a point against Hassan's overall worldview for it to be like, well, you can only go to certain hotels, like for that to be part of the part of the regime there.
And like, also, not to harp on this, but if the whole point is to give the maximum amount of aid to Cuba, is it a good spend of resources to have all these people in a nice fancy hotel, getting nice fancy dinners, having like private concerts? Is that a good allocation of resources if the goal is to give the maximum amount of aid to Cubans? It doesn't seem like it to me. They could sleep on the boat.
It's just the perfect. It's
right?
the
They must have
perfect
slept on the boat already.
encapsulation of. It's just champagne socialism. It was like literally the perfect encapsulation of that. It's like literally people dying in hospitals because of their actions while they claim to be, good people for what they're doing for the Cuban people. Like I don't think I could come up with a better encapsulation of the problem with socialists than that. I know I've invited Casimir up to co-host. He's obviously not got his hand up yet, but wanted to give him the opportunity to speak. Hello, Casimir. How are you? Did you want to jump in at all?
Hello. No, I'm just enjoying the show so far, and yeah, it's really really amusing and really really ironic, especially for myself. I was born in the Soviet Union. I saw that system from within a little bit, and I heard about it quite a lot from my mother and father, and I know how it actually works. It's not just champagne by the visiting stars like Hassan, but also from their government. They have a very clear and obvious and well-known internally two-tier system where all the space age stuff that gets imported from China and by way of other countries, the United States, gets offered to the people at the top, and as a reward to really, really obedient enforcers, let's call them that. And then everybody else gets the remains. And of course, the local communists in the United States have this excuse, which will no doubt present you as an argument, that without the U.S. embargo, the socialists of both countries would have, freely exchanged what is needed, and it's the embargo that's preventing that exchange. So I think they still have a way to sort of poke at it, even though it's incoherent. But the point that they don't donate directly to Cuba, even though financial contributions are allowed, that point they have no counter to. That's ridiculous from them.
Only Casimir could turn "no, I have nothing to say" into a couple minutes of contributions. I always appreciate your contributions, man. We'll go to, I guess, Alfred next, and then we'll hit up William. So, Alfred, got your hand up. Please go ahead, man.
So the
Oh, I think he dropped
just-
down.
Yeah, he did. He's gone. He gone. Well, I guess in that
Damn,
light,
Cubans
we'll
got
go
him.
to. Yeah, literally, the Cuban government came for him, along with the Israelis. They came and got him. All right, let me go to William next. Please jump in, man.
Literally just a small quip. It is so funny that he goes and then disappears. And anyway, similarly, harkening back just a little bit to this short discussion on aesthetics, it's interesting that people in this call found the story of Hassan going to Cuba and then people dying due to a power shortage so compelling. As again, this literally demonstrates a contradiction in the champagne socialist perspective. But it's important that that we realize the value of this story. The reason why it's so compelling is explicitly because this effectively communicates the correct philosophy by showing a contradiction in the opposing philosophy, essentially. It is not the contradiction itself that creates a compelling story. And I think this distinction is what Acorn was attempting to elucidate, and I think Zulu explained after, so that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, it's like in Atlas Shrugged, you know, if you haven't read Atlas Shrugged, I mean, go read it and I guess plug your ears for the next 5 minutes or something. In Atlas Shrugged,
Oh, I have.
The whole premise is, well, what if the producers go on strike, right? It is the socialists, they have all these claims that like, these evil capitalists, they're exploiting us by hiring us. It's like, okay, then I'll go on strike. I won't produce anymore because that's evil exploitation. I'm not going to engage in capitalism anymore. I'm going to go on strike. And it's showing the contradiction of the parasites' worldview, that they simultaneously rely on these producers whilst hating the producers and saying that the producers are evil for their production, right? The whole book is just elaborating upon that contradiction. So that is the sense in which contradiction works in fiction.
Do you want to pull up that tweet that I saw you did, Liquid Zulu, where this guy said that you're a piece of shit?
Oh, yes.
Which one? Which one?
That one's a funny one.
Let me see here. I like it.
I mean, just to continue a little bit about Atlas Shrugged, I'd say the beautiful metaphor of Atlas Shrugged is even more apparent just from the title of the book, right? If you keep stealing from and violating Atlas, who is literally holding the world up, even just indifference, even if he just shrugged at the mere sight of the problem, world would fall from his shoulders. Just mere indifference from the productive class would cause the world to fall. And yet the anti-productive class is, throwing spears at the productive class.
I do have the tweet here. I sent it to Monhop because I don't know how to work this dang jumbotron thing.
All right, let me whack it up in the I don't even know why it's called the jumbotron. That's just what I started. Someone called it that, and so I started calling that. So
you don't
By
need
the
to
way,
put that
Monhop,
first, but I
when
put
you're
in
done
there.
with this,
what was
when
that?
you're done with this
Casimir?
topic, when you're done with this topic, I have another topic on aesthetics.
We can definitely pick up on that. So
Yeah.
Zulu, this tweet.
Yeah, so this guy, somebody says we should fund basic housing that requires drug screening. This is basically, like, which by the way, this was like my most successful 24 hours on Twitter of all time. I don't know what the fuck happened, but every goddamn tweet I sent in this period, King Midas himself came down and turned it into a banger, I guess. Where I was saying that hostile architecture is actually a good thing because it's defensive against homeless people, and somebody's saying that we need to fund basic housing that requires drug screening and so on. I say, who pays for it? And this guy says, I should pay for it because I'm a piece of shit. So I'm basically saying that you can see the same contradiction that Atlas Shrugged points at. I'm a piece of shit because I'm capable of providing for these people, and they're virtuous because they aren't capable of providing for themselves. The parasite hates and wants to destroy the very thing that is the root of his sustenance. And I draw out analogy to Atlas Shrugged there.
For sure. Yeah, so Casimir, you said you wanted to bring a new topic within aesthetics up. So I think we're ready for that now. Oh, actually, no, sorry. Let me go to, sorry, before we do that. Pyphoros had his hand up, so I want to let him jump in real quick. So Pyphoros, thanks for waiting, man. Sorry I almost missed you, but please go ahead.
Hello. Yeah, sorry, I'm new to this platform, so I didn't know how exactly this worked. But to get to the point, I also kind of had something I wanted to touch about aesthetics, I think, but I forgot it during the wait. I mainly just wanted to posit a grievance about how everyone thinks objectivism necessitates the only thing you appreciate be Art Deco. But the actual thing I had a question about was in pertains to philosophy, because I know I brought up like the new atheist movement earlier, and I was wondering, like, I wanted to bounce the ideas off of, do you consider it necessarily rotten or dangerous to try and sway other people to libertarian ends on their own philosophy if you can't convince them of your own base philosophy? I spend a lot of time interacting with Thomists, for example, and I try to reach out on common Aristotelian roots and things like the School of Salamanca to try and appeal them to the idea and like Hoppian traditionalism.
So I mean, as far as libertarianism is concerned, I'm fine with any sort of libertarian, so long as they are a libertarian. As far as that coalition is concerned, it doesn't matter what your philosophy outside of law is. I can definitely vibe with and work with Christian libertarians, even Kantian libertarians, like shock and horror. But it's totally fine. Personally, I think it's non-fundamental, so I don't bother with that type of thing. But I mean, I definitely, it certainly does sway, and if you can get some of these Christians and whatnot to maybe be less, evil, that's certainly a good thing.
All right, well, that's about all I had. I had other topics I wanted to bounce off, but that would get too off topic, and I have to leave here shortly anyway. By the way, this is the other epithet of the lazy fae, so yeah, that's me. I'll be going now.
Well, thank you for coming on, and thank you for the super chats.
Cool. Well, with all that said, I will jump over to Casimir now. So Casimir, please jump in and go ahead.
Yeah, and just for that last speaker, I can't read your full name, and I'm afraid of clicking on it. It'll break the whole thing. Oh, Pyphoros, excellent. I totally side with you. Even more enthusiastic than Liquid Zulu on this, and I've been working on this front with some of the Christian Orthodox community with very similar arguments. I think it's more consistent for them to adopt our law as like a discovery about the way the universe works, and I believe from that perspective, it's totally compatible with their ideology because they cannot reject they cannot really do illogical things. So the proof there is very quick, simple. If I prove to them that something is the logical way of doing things, they have to accept that this was a part of creation, like this literally the proof. So I think it's very fruitful to engage with them that way. And they are quite natural allies for the reasons Monhop described, because they are a form of realism. So even if we will fight with them about which realism is the better realism, it's a very nice fight. Our debates tend to be quite polite compared to a debate against a slave or parasite, who we can't say what we want to do to them. So there's that. Completely unrelated, I wanted to bring a topic about aesthetics. I almost don't want to do it because if any of you are video creators, this is going to be a banger. If you just snip the idea, communize the idea from me. But
I'll be taking notes.
Exactly. I think that, Atlas Shrugged is great, but it would be nice if we had some media these days that we could actually watch with our guard slightly down that would promote our ideology, that would promote our values, that would promote some form of, ANCAP, pro-capitalist thought, maybe with a slight right-wing bend, maybe even a few objectivist hints here and there. And there is one. I'm gonna spoil the last few episodes, some aspects of them. There's a show called Free Run with the second season that you all quite know. And if you don't know about that show, you're an ANCAP or an objectivist, you should start watching it. It is absolutely blessed. There are references. I'll just describe one idea that they brought, that they reminded me of, that I started to forget. This is a spoiler. In the last episode, they had a quite empathetic explanation of why it is bad to just donate stuff, to just give to the poor. That instead, every time you do something for someone, you should find something that they can provide you as payment. And because we have a relative theory of value, it can literally be anything. Anything can be claimed as a form of equal exchange, something that they want less than you want. And that creates a noble exchange. And the reason why it's noble is because they don't become your dependent. They know that next time they want something, they don't owe you. They can just, find the next small thing that you prefer over what they have and give it to you and obtain that service. Whereas the altruist model of giving is always making the person who gets donated a dependent. And it's presented in the most aesthetically pleasing and beautiful form in that show that will make you struggle as a man and not to shed a tear as you watch it. So we are blessed in a timeline where the Japanese are producing strong right-wing and even overtly ANCAP media. Enjoy it while you can.
Incredibly based. I'll have to check it out. Yeah, thank you for that, Casimir. Julie, did you have any thoughts?
Not on that. I definitely will have to watch the show, but I do have a super chat question from PraxTube for 250 of something. So thank you very much for that. Asking, what is the libertarian strategy when you're starting with no established institutions? I'm from Southeast Asia, and there's nothing here. So very similar situation over here. There's not really any libertarian institutions over here. None to speak of. There is the Scottish Libertarian Party. That's, they're not in a position to be like funding any research projects or anything. Obviously the route I went down is creating on the internet, because then you can gain an audience across the entire globe and get funded that way. I don't think, these institutions I have completely lost any patience with or any hope that they will do anything good in the near future. It's the big changes are not going to come from the institutions, in my view.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with you. All right, we'll go to William again, and then we'll hit up. You can always change your mind. William, please jump in and go ahead.
Regarding effective altruism as being essentially receiving something from your payment as well as giving it out, it's interesting that I spoke with some venerable Buddhist monks at a monastery and posited the example of Warren Buffett effectively not giving anything his entire life until he is old enough and has accumulated disgusting amounts of wealth, or sorry, admirable amounts of wealth, and now is donating it upon his death. And I posited that this method of quote unquote altruism is a more effective method of altruism than, say, just donating money as you earn it, as investing and growing your wealth and accumulating more wealth allows you to do more good with it in the long run, right? Obviously, the logical conclusion from this is to never just donate, right? It is to be effective with investing your wealth and to continue perpetuating this cycle of effective investments and accumulating more wealth. As in reality, wealth doesn't come from non-productive means naturally. So to expound on this, the principle of receiving something from your donation and not creating dependency is much closer, I think, to an equity or debt investment. Now, of course, you're not actually signing papers for equity or debt, but I think the oldest form of equity is giving somebody $20 and then saying, "Now you owe me one." Right? That's effectively the oldest and smallest form of like an IPO, so to speak. So uh, this form of giving, I think, is very effective in a objectivist sense and is compatible with objectivist principles, as you're not just engaging in a contradiction by saying you are not deserving of the things you've earned, but instead making a highly speculative investment in somebody, saying you owe me one, and then hoping that they become rich and wealthy from your giving, and then give some back to you in thanks. So I believe this is the most effective form of giving, so to speak. It's how you can build up your community in a more effective and philosophically coherent way.
It's how fraternal societies worked. Fraternal
That's
societies
a great example, yeah.
were based on the premise that you had to buy into the community, so to speak. So you had to be willing to contribute, even if it was in some small way, in order to derive the benefit of being in that community. And that does a couple of things. Again, even in a kind of a game theory sense, if you're just going to start giving to people with no strings attached, that's going to foster, as Zulu kind of said, dependency, where you create a scenario where the incentive, as we kind of point out with the welfare state, and it still applies even if the welfare is voluntary. The incentive there is to be dependent on other people. So just because the state's not involved doesn't mean that that dependency isn't created. Whereas the incentive with the fraternal society is to buy in and contribute, and then if you need assistance, people will be willing to assist you because they know that you'll assist them if they need it. So yeah, I agree. I think the
Precisely.
emergent phenomena we've already seen and we would see would be more of the fraternal society type than just of charity. And this is a position I've held for quite a while. This idea that charitable organizations would spring up, with charity being just a donation of money with no strings attached. I don't believe that would be the case. You might see some of it, but I think fraternal societies or similar concepts would be far more common and would emerge in preference to just donate me money so that I can give to the poor. Like, I think that would be less common than what people suspect.
And I would pause it on this front. I strongly suspect, I haven't done a whole lot of thinking about this because I just thought of this right when William was speaking. I suspect that Jeff Bezos has probably done more good in the world than every charity combined. I would suspect that that's probably the case. Wow, even if you exclude all of his charitable donations direct, right? I think just building Amazon is a much bigger benefit to the world than all of the malaria nets, all of the donations towards like starving children, all of that. I think that's probably a lot less important than building Amazon.
Yeah, I can definitely recall, and this individual's been caught up in some potentially nefarious activities regarding a certain island. But I can recall Bill Gates saying about Bill Gates that the best thing he ever did for anyone was create Microsoft, not any of the charitable stuff that he used to do with his wife and their like charity. As far as I'm concerned, the actual businesses that he and the entrepreneurship that he did was better for society than just donating some money to people. That's my personal opinion, anyway. William, did you want to jump back in at all? I know you've got your mic off, so I just wanted to give you a chance to jump back in if you had any other comments.
Oh no, sorry, I just left it unmuted.
Oh, okay, all good. No worries. Well, I did also want to say, oh, Zulu, jump in.
No, I did have a super chat related to what Casimir was talking about. If unless you had something urgent.
No, go ahead.
So this is from the Lazy Fae, who is apparently in this panel, Pierre Foros. So for $20 US, thank you very much, man. Saying anime set in the Middle Ages tends to be surprisingly based. Yusha, sorry, I do not know how to pronounce that, is about ending a war with the power of economic development and technology while encouraging ideas of self-sufficiency and mutual self-interest. Cool. Is anybody...
Very, very based.
Oh
I
wait,
want
one moment.
Oh yeah, sorry.
For Pierre, there's some content you will be interested in the direction of giving Christian ANCAP arguments. So I think it was yesterday or earlier today. Praxban released a new YouTube video. I highly recommend it. It is the Christian argument for, I believe, it is like the argument against the so-called Christian socialists, quoting a lot of the scripture, and the history. Just very nicely done video. Although most of it is like a podcast, so I did enjoy it.
Yeah, you had a nice little, as you said, it's more like a podcast on YouTube, but the little animation you had going was actually quite nice as well. I didn't mind it. So, no, everyone should definitely check out that video. It is very well made, and it is good to see Praxben making content again after, not being really on YouTube very much over the past few years. He's been off doing other stuff, I understand, with, I think it was Young Americans. I don't know. There's some like thing that he's been a part of that he's been doing stuff for. And it seems to have taken away from his YouTube content, but or content in general. But and obviously he also got banned off TikTok at one point. But he seems to have, actually, I'm not going to say that he did not, guys. He definitely did not find his way back to TikTok. In case anyone's listening, Praxben is not on TikTok. I can promise you, definitely not back on TikTok. Anyway, so I do want to bring up, unless anyone's got any other thoughts. Obviously, Casimir, you were on the Rational Frontier the other day. I quite enjoyed that. I've listened to, out of the 4 hours, I've probably listened to over 3 of them intently, and it was quite good. Do you want to? I suppose I wanted to have a chat about it, but did you want to kind of summarize what the key purpose of that kind of discussion you had with our good friend Man Sharma was?
Yeah, I shouldn't have forgotten about it, but actually, I did point at you and Liquid Zulu as a little bit of debate opponents in part of that. So you guys should definitely probably listen to the first. Well, I think you will agree with the statements in the first hour and 50 minutes because they're just like views that we generally share about cultural formation in the West compared to other parts in the world. At least my theory, you might not like my theory, but I think in general conclusions are the same. And then at about 1:45, I start an argument about extending guardianship and certain other things, and my disagreement with you guys on strategy. So I am a proponent of let's not talk about the borders right now. And I know the initial counter argument is, well, the damn Prags are talking about it, so therefore we must talk about it to counter them. But I present my argument in that podcast if you want to hear it. At least I think that we should. I know that Liquid Zulu knows about the problem, and therefore it's purely on the principal grounds that he is promoting open borders ideas online, and it's not your responsibility to argue for both sides of a question. But I know many libertarians who have absolutely delusional egalitarian positions that they believe in, and their arguments are devastating to our, I believe, our cause, because they're not based on principle. They're based on feelings, and they're making a huge tactical mistake. They're inviting their own doom, and they're like biting a bullet without even having the argument to back up why they have to. They bite it because they want to, which is to me a little bit insane. And they're definitely, nobody's looking for a solution to this issue. So my strategy, the one that I propose, is definitely talk about it less and to talk more about, alternatives, such as creating a country for libertarians, a country in the sense of a geographical area, making sure that libertarians, somebody asked the question, what should I do from Southeast Asia? My immediate thought is you should move if you can. It is very tough to create something that somebody in your country can simply take away from you. And so I could advise on how to do that, how successful projects were created in other countries. But it's always, you will never get away from a very serious threat of getting completely robbed and having your life work undone. Whereas that chance in the United States and certain states of the United States is much smaller. And therefore, they're much more appealing as places to build and grow. But there are arguments against that as well, such as if we gather everybody in one place, we're a very nice target. So we have to be able to defend that as well. So those are the thoughts of the first half. The second half is the guardianship argument, and I don't want to present it here again because I did it last Remnant episode, I believe. So you can go and watch it there. It's not as concise as it should be for like a paper, but it's on the way.
Oh, well,
That's pretty. Sorry, go ahead, Zulu. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I'll definitely I'll check that. I won't. Obviously, we're not going to have a sidebar argument here when I haven't even heard your full argument yet. So I'll go check out that episode. Did you say it was about 1 hour 45 minutes in to that episode?
Yes, when I like do specifically call outs about strategy, I think about an hour 30 in, we start referencing. The way I speak is meandering, so it's like I explain that I disagree with you guys early on. Then I bring in the historical context of I basically disprove the egalitarian position by showing what actually happens historically with great groups of people, according to my understanding of history. And then I touch upon disagreements in strategy and present my theory of what I do believe. Oh, so let me name it. Actually, it'll be easier for you. I very strongly believe that we were anyone that said that stolen goods can be abandoned in the past or can be considered abandoned. I think that it's wrong, and I believe I present very strong arguments against forms of involuntary abandonment claims. Munch Harmer does a decent job good job actually of positing counter arguments that they have to counter. And so that's the first, the next 1.5 hours after that. And basically 3 hours in, it becomes a more relaxed show, so you can skip. No, watch everything for Munch Harmer's sake.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, watch the full video. We want the full engagement time that YouTube to see for the algorithm.
And make sure you watch it on 0.5% speed, because then he gets double watch time.
Is that? That's not true, is it?
It is true.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So for instance, if you speed up a video to 2 times, then they only get half the watch time for that.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to start watching Anatomy of the. I'm just going to start putting Anatomy of the Celebritarian on as I go to sleep on half time, and then that way you get like 6 hours of watch time.
This is like, what some people might consider it like an insult. If you say to like a YouTuber, like, hey, I watch your videos to go to sleep. You know, on its face, it might sound like, oh, so like I'm boring or whatever. But no, if you say that to any competent YouTuber, that I watch your videos to go to sleep, their eyes roll over and they see money bags. Like it turns into dollar signs, like
Yeah.
they're in a Looney Tunes cartoon. Because if you watch videos to go to sleep, you're getting 100% watch time on each of those videos, and it's probably going to keep recommending those videos. That is the if I could cultivate an entire channel of just people who are asleep, I'd be loaded.
Well, that's literally what they like. There's literally like accounts that are dedicated to like 3 hours of historical facts to fall asleep to. I literally started getting recommended those at roughly 11:30 every single evening if I open YouTube because it knows that I'm about to go to bed, and so it wants me to start like clicking on a video. And yeah, there's literally people that have dedicated channels and successful channels, literally to just making these factoid videos that they know most of their audience isn't ever actually going to listen to properly because they'll be asleep after 20 minutes into it. But yeah, no, you 100% you should listen to a Liquid Zulu video or a Rational Frontier video. If it's a nice, soothing vocal experience for you to help you get into a deep, relaxing sleep, then that is a very, very good thing. Let's hear from You Can Always Change Your Mind again. Thanks very much for coming on, brother. Please jump in.
Thank you. I have 3 things to say. He was talking about Southeast Asia, that he should like move away from there. I'm not necessarily sure about that. I mean, there's a lot of business opening up there. They're a lot more laissez-faire, the governments there. I think because they want to have more money to exploit, and they don't have much to lose by doing so. Like they aren't like established empires, so they have a lot to gain. Like in the evil sense, I guess, to tax you less and exploit you less. So I'm not sure if he should actually move there. It depends on his context and which of the Southeast Asian countries he's in. So yeah, do you have any comments on that, Casimir?
I stand corrected. I was going to throw out hearts if they weren't purple here.
Yeah, I recommend watching Nomad Capitalist. He has some videos, at least one video on Southeast Asia as compared to United States, if you're interested.
I guess I would say it depends on the country. What should matter to you is like at which point does your business have a risk of being taken from you? And in certain countries like China, if you stay small enough, you can even do it in China. In certain countries, it's unheard of for corporations to be completely like taken over. And then you should go ahead and do that. And if you asked what institution should you build, the first thing that came to my mind is like a very strong company. You should be an entrepreneur first and foremost. That's how you bring people to your side, is you generate local value. And you will naturally gain power as a side effect, and will be able to use that power to promote your ideology within your company. So just try to stay away from shareholder agreements as much as you can, and that's it.
Cool. I have another thing. So like you just mentioned like a spoiler for free run. I'm like have an idea like when you say there's a spoiler, like say like you do a thumbs up afterwards, because I'm actually wanting to watch that at some point, because Tim Duces he showed me one episode and it was like really good production quality, and he said many other good things about it, so I definitely want to see that at some point, maybe after Pluribus. I haven't started it yet, but I've gotten a link to a piracy site to watch it.
I'll probably have to rewatch the first season because I did not get these strong ANCAP vibes initially. Maybe they were there from the start, but the second season they became so overt that I was just I was surprised the first few times it happened in the show.
Nice. Yeah, I think I will start with season 1 and see how it goes, and then do season 2. I did watch, I think, like a second episode of season 2. So yeah. There was another thing I wanted to talk about. I was watching
before you do
Ezekiel.
that, can you turn the gain on your mic down a little bit because it's peaking?
I can move my microphone away. Is that doing better?
Yes.
Let's see. Testing. Nice. Yeah, so I was watching Call Me Ezekiel, and he argued that politics is better defined basically the same way we define law. That's not what he said, but he defined it that way because they obviously are anarchists who do not believe we should have government at all. I think this will make like discussion easier with statists. You don't have to mention law necessarily, and they already have like understanding of politics. But if it is like a frozen abstraction understanding that they have, then you can clarify that there are anarchist positions too. And it's about human interaction and what to do about human interaction and such, or conflicts, perhaps you could say. So I was wondering, Zulu, if it's valid to define politics, redefine it basically around human interaction or human conflict.
I mean, it makes it no longer a frozen abstraction, but it's not really how the branch of politics has been defined in the history of philosophy, which obviously comes from the fact that it was just a big unchecked premise the whole time. I mean, I think it's just, obviously I think it's a lot cleaner to just have law be what we're talking about, because that really is what people generally mean by law. Like, when does the law come into it? When do you need to go in front of a judge? It's when you got conflicts. Like, that is very clearly, like, it just inductively, that is what the foundation is. That's what the essential is.
I don't have a response to that at the moment, but whenever I'm like describing my position, most people say that it is a position on politics. They would say, most people that I'm talking to. But yeah, I'll think more about it and maybe bring it up again later. That was all for me so far.
Cool. Zulu, I mean, I'm kind of running out of things to talk about at this point. I'd almost be happy to wrap things up, unless I mean, I'm more than happy to keep going. But do you have anything that you wanted to bring up at all?
No, I got through both the topics for my clickbait thumbnails, so I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, great show. So I'm good to ramp it up here.
I mean, I do want to ask. I'm gonna have to say his name: Cox, Butts, and Balls. Appreciate you making me say that, bro. Do you want?
Sorry.
Do you want to jump in and contribute at all?
Well, Liquid Zulu said something like a few minutes ago, something about talking about like theory or methodology or something like that. So I thought I'd let y'all know I put together an essay. It's mostly written by AI, but I did edit it myself, so I proved everything that did go into it. It's on my profile. A link to a GitHub repo where I have it posted in Markdown and PDF form. I called it. Hold on a second, let me grab it. Let me bring it up real quick. Sorry. Here we go. Yeah, the semi-private production of dissolution, aka how to use state greed against itself for fun and profit. It's not a let's see, philosophically pure solution, or whatever you would call it, because it does kind of make some concession, but it works within the framework that we kind of have to deal with. I see Zulu's bringing it up on his stream, because it does kind of treat the state's power and authority as legitimate to a degree, but it uses that to hopefully dissolve that power through basically exploiting statesmen's rational self-interest, financial self-interest, that kind of thing. I can speak more about it if you'd like.
I mean, if you got more to say, then sure. I can check it out later if you want.
Sure, and I did send you a link on Discord to it. I know that, or maybe I just sent you the PDF, and a bunch of other people through Discord. But yeah, essentially the idea is a lot like the whole special economic zone, but like how Prospera, they still have to collect like a 5% tax for the Honduran government. The idea with this is that instead of a 5% tax, companies that would set up shop within the special economic zone would instead give over like 5 to 10% share of their company to the government officials who are basically directly in charge of allowing the special economic zone to exist. And it goes to them personally rather than the government. That way, they have effectively a financial incentive in order to not try to retake the special economic zone or whatever, or infringe upon it. And part of the whole thing is that as part of the contract, if they do anything to infringe upon the sovereignty of the economic zone, that would effectively render their shares of those companies null and void. So the company would be basically under no obligation to ever buy those shares back, rendering them without value. And there could be more to that.
Well, I think there are some problems. Always, I imagine you probably elaborate on it quite a bit in the paper. But it sounds like a very.
It's definitely not pure.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a great way to creep towards central planning if all these businesses are giving away control to the government, not just having to, put aside some money to give to the government, like ongoing control to the government. I'm not a fan of that, and also like it does rest on the premise that a government who's looking to seize companies, will honor contracts, where it's like, oh, now your shares are void, haha. Like that's I think a bad premise.
Right, and it does point out that it is impure and kind of does have some potential issues, but I one of the things is it doesn't go to the government as much as it goes to it doesn't go to the government, it goes to the specific politicians themselves. So you wouldn't be able to do it here in the US, for example, because there's laws against that kind of thing. But the idea is basically, politicians tend to vote in favor of their, whatever companies they hold stocks in. If that makes sense.
For sure, appreciate that, man.
Yeah, no problem.
We'll go to you can always change your mind, and then we might wrap things up there. So for one last time for the day, you can always change your mind. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I was just continuing on the politics and the law thing. I was thinking I'm not sure if you have a study on like human interaction in general, but we do have like that for conflict, which is law. But I was thinking maybe law could be the subset of politics, and politics being about all human interaction, cooperative and conflict interaction, and then politics being a subset of ethics again. Could that work? Is that I haven't thought that much about it yet, but there was an idea I had.
I'll have to check, but I think James Elias, when I was talking to him before, might have said a similar sort of thing. I think I mean, yeah, it sounds fine enough to me. If politics just means any human interaction, and law being a subset of that, I mean, I'd be fine with that. It's just that's not generally how it's defined.
Right. Yeah, because I'm thinking law is more specifically about conflict, more formal in that sense. I mean, it would be formal politics to her in this case, but so like for communists, you have like how the proletariat should do this, cooperate in this way and this way. Yeah, I'm just thinking of examples, but yeah. Another question: have you? You don't have to anything. I'm just wondering. Have you read like the Agorist primer that I asked you if you could read? Because I heard you mention red markets. I've not heard you mention that before, and I know that's Agorist term.
No, I've not read it yet, but I mean, I am somewhat familiar with agorism. Obviously, I mean, you know, you get it through osmosis at the very least if you're in this space. Yeah, no, I've not read it yet.
Cool.
All right. Well, we might wrap things up there. As I said, obviously this was a unusual time slot, and we won't be doing this regularly. It was purely because obviously Zulu had his little issue. I don't want to say little issue, but the issue that has since been resolved. That meant that we couldn't do it during our usual time slot, and then I stuffed up and forgot to tell people that I then had to push it back another day. So we'll be back to the usual regularly scheduled programming, I guess you say. Not this weekend, but next weekend, assuming all goes well. That's the plan. But yeah, Zula, any kind of final thoughts before we wrap things up?
Yeah, no, thank you very much to everybody who came along. I do have one super chat, which could be addressed to the panel here, from PranksTube for another 125 of some sort of currency. Thank you very much. Saying thanks to this is the guy who was, I believe, talking about how he was in Southeast Asia before. Thanks to whoever mentioned it's rough when the government in my country is just a bunch of bootlickers and the president was the son of a dictator. So yeah, thank you very much for that, and thank you everybody who's come along, especially those who've super chatted, and even Zernx, aka Eli, has just given another $5. Thank you very much, man. Who was on the panel before, saying awesome episode. I'm trying to find someone who disagrees with us and you guys. Hopefully they join next time. Yeah, well, hopefully. Yeah, anybody can come along, and yeah, good episode. Thank you very much.
Cheers, guys. See you all next time. Zyle Zulu.
Zulu. And that is all the super chats. I do not believe I missed any. God. Yep, that looks good.